Bullied teen took a
You
bullet for
okay?
Hell's Angel sister diner shooting. 142 bikers fell to their knees. A bullet tore through the quiet of Mel's diner that Tuesday morning, but it wasn't aimed at the 16-year-old sitting in the corner. It was meant for his sister, the most feared Hell's Angel in Montana. And what happened next made 142 hardened bikers drop to their knees. Why would they kneel for a boy they had never met? The smell of bacon, coffee, and old grease wrapped the diner like a thick fog that never lifted. The black and white checkered floor bore the marks of decades, scratches and scuffs where boots had stomped over the years. Red vinyl seats in booths cracked and faded, revealing yellow foam beneath, while the hum of an ancient air conditioner did little to battle the heat of a Montana summer. Outside, rows of motorcycles glinted in the sun, chrome parts shining like mirrors, lined up like soldiers. Inside, the bikers sat scattered, vests hung on chair backs, patches telling stories that only they understood. Conversation drifted in low murmurs, punctuated by clinking coffee cups. At the corner booth, Isaiah Harper pressed himself into the wall, hunched like he wanted to vanish. His brown hair fell over his eyes, shielding him from the world. His shoulders curved inward as though the room's air weighed him down. Bruises dotted his arms, purple fading to yellow, a fresh red mark on his neck. He picked at the eggs on his plate, but the fork scratched the ceramic idly, his appetite gone. The stutter that had haunted him since childhood lurked in the background of his voice. Across from him, Vanessa Harper, 24, was a study in strength. Arms scarred from grease and metal, leather vest decorated with Hell's Angel patches, eyes sharp and unwavering. She clutched her coffee mug, black and bitter, and watched her little brother with a mixture of worry and fierce love. A predator could enter the diner, and she would be ready. "You've got new bruises," she said, voice steady but edged like broken glass. Isaiah shrugged, pushing scrambled eggs around the plate. "Nothing," he muttered. The word came out smoother than expected, a fleeting moment of courage. Vanessa's eyes narrowed. "Nothing doesn't look like that," she said. Vanessa's gaze softened for a fraction of a second. She remembered the day she had dropped out of college, barely 19, to raise Isaiah alone. Their mother had died suddenly, leaving a quiet void filled only with grief. Vanessa had worked 2 jobs, learned to fix motorcycles, and slowly became a figure Isaiah could cling to in a world that seemed determined to push him down. Isaiah knew every scar on her hands, every oil stain on her vest. He knew she had given up dreams to protect him, and guilt sat heavy in his chest, a constant weight. "I'm fine," he whispered, though they both knew it was a lie. Vanessa's voice carried the authority of someone who had fought tooth and nail to survive. "You shouldn't have to handle it," she said. "You're a kid. Kids shouldn't get beat up, and they shouldn't be afraid to speak." Isaiah's chest tightened. Words got stuck in his throat, stuck like stones he couldn't swallow or spit out. He'd grown up dodging punches at school, whispers of taunts trailing him in hallways, lockers slammed on his back, cruel laughter echoing in ears that still remembered it. The world had never been gentle to him, yet Vanessa made him feel, for fleeting moments, that it could be. The diner's door jingled softly, pulling both their eyes to the entrance. 3 men stepped in, slow and deliberate, eyes scanning the room. Conversations dimmed to whispers. Vanessa's hand brushed her belt, fingers hovering near the knife she always kept ready. Isaiah's stomach twisted, tension built like a drumbeat that refused to stop. The tallest man had a tattoo under his eye, a teardrop that hinted at a life Isaiah couldn't imagine. A gun peeked from under his flannel shirt, its presence sharp and undeniable. The other 2 men flanked him, eyes scanning like predators assessing prey. Vanessa stood between Isaiah and the men, her body a shield. She had done this before, faced danger head-on so her brother could breathe. She had slept on his bedroom floor when nightmares racked him, chased bullies away, left lights on so darkness wouldn't swallow him whole. She was his anchor. The men's voices cut through the air, slow and deliberate. "Vanessa Harper," the tallest said, his tone flat yet cutting. "We've been looking for you." Vanessa straightened. Leather creaked. Her eyes didn't flinch. Isaiah could feel his heart hammering, muscles tense, every instinct screaming that danger had finally found them. The diner held its breath. Waitress frozen, an old man mid-bite, a trucker reading a newspaper. Everyone paused, caught in the moment between the ordinary and the impending storm. Isaiah's mind raced. The patches, the colors, the subtle scorpions curling on their vests, it clicked. He had heard whispers, late-night conversations, territory disputes between biker clubs. This was not random. This was war. The men advanced slightly. Vanessa's hand stayed on her belt, calm but ready. Time stretched, the quiet hum of the diner louder than any voice. Isaiah, usually small and powerless, felt a surge of something unfamiliar. Fear, yes, but also a spark of resolve, a deep-seated need to protect the one person who had never let him fall. Then the tallest man's hand moved toward the gun. Isaiah watched, frozen, as the man's fingers tightened around the gun. Every second stretched longer than it should, the fluorescent lights overhead buzzing louder in his ears. Vanessa's body was rigid, a wall of leather and scars, her eyes locked on the intruder. Isaiah wanted to move, to run, to hide, but his body refused. All the years of being pushed, laughed at, and ignored pooled in his chest. Every bruise, every whispered insult, every stuttered word became fuel for something primal, something he didn't even know existed in him. It wasn't courage, at least not the kind he'd ever felt before. It was fire, raw and unrelenting. He could feel the air thickening, tension pulling every muscle taut. The three men advanced, steps heavy, boots scraping against the checkered floor. Vanessa's hand hovered near the knife at her belt. She was calm, steady, but Isaiah could see her pulse quicken in her neck, the way a predator waits, calculating. The diner itself seemed to hold its breath. Coffee cups clinked softly on counters, the sizzle of bacon on the grill went unnoticed, and even the old air conditioner's hum faded into the background. Every eye in the room, every body had gone still. There was no movement except the slow, deliberate motion of the intruders. Isaiah's mind ran faster than his body could. He counted, 12 people, no more, no less. The waitress behind the counter, frozen in fear. The old man with pie halfway to his mouth. The trucker reading a newspaper. 3 Hell's Angels near the window, ready, but too far to react in time. And then there was him, small and thin, cornered with his sister, the only person who had ever truly protected him. Time dilated. He could see the man's finger brushing the gun's trigger, the cold black metal catching the light, gleaming like a predator's tooth. He could feel the thrum of blood in his ears, the sharp beat of fear, the sudden clarity that someone had to act. Then it all went quiet, not peaceful, but the kind of silence before a storm. Isaiah's chest tightened. Something inside him snapped, a fuse lit after years of being small and silent. His body moved before his brain could argue. Feet pushing off the booth, hands slamming against the edge of the table, plates rattling, coffee spilling. All 120 pounds of him launched forward, toward the danger, toward Vanessa. Vanessa's eyes went wide, lips parting in a soundless scream. She moved instinctively to shield him, but Isaiah's shoulder collided with hers just as the gun fired. The shot rang out, a deafening crack that shattered the fragile tension of the diner. Pain exploded through Isaiah's right shoulder, white-hot and blinding. He spun sideways, crashing into the vinyl seat back, his head bouncing, every nerve screaming. For a moment, the world was nothing but searing agony. The smell of gunpowder mingled with bacon and coffee. The diner seemed to tilt sideways, chaos frozen in slow motion. Vanessa's scream cut through the pain, sharp and primal, as she grabbed him. "Isaiah, stay with me!" Her hands, strong and sure, held him as if sheer will could keep him from falling apart. But the bullet had done its work, and his breath came in shallow, ragged pulls. The 3 men froze, stunned, as if they hadn't expected the boy to move at all. The waitress crouched behind the counter, tears streaking her face, while the trucker's jaw hung slack. The other bikers rose slowly, their vests rustling, hands moving instinctively toward weapons, but the moment had passed in the blink of a bullet. Isaiah felt himself slipping, every thought fragmented, floating in a haze of pain and adrenaline. He could hear his heartbeat, fast and erratic, counting down in an endless loop. He could hear Vanessa's voice, low and firm, grounding him. "Focus, Isaiah, breathe, stay with me, you're not done." Somewhere in the back of his mind, memories came rushing in, being bullied, shoved into lockers, whispered taunts in hallways. All the days he had felt invisible, powerless, small. And now, somehow, that smallness had transformed into something impossible to ignore. Courage. He had saved his sister. The diner seemed to hold its breath again. The chrome of the motorcycles outside caught the sun, blinding, beautiful. The patches on the bikers' vests gleamed. And Isaiah Harper, a boy who had always been overlooked, lay in a booth that would soon be remembered, a kid who had taken a bullet for love. The sound of a siren wailing in the distance was distant, yet somehow final. Slowly, the bikers began to move. One by one, their leather-clad knees hit the floor. 142 hardened, tattooed men, kneeling, heads bowed in an almost reverent acknowledgement of something greater than fear or respect. Vanessa's hands trembled slightly as she held Isaiah, who was pale and trembling but alive. She looked up, confused and shaken, to see the men, her brothers in leather, paying homage to the boy who had done what she would have done herself. The three intruders, the Scorpions, froze in disbelief. Their threats, their power, their carefully calculated intimidation, none of it mattered anymore. They looked around at a room transformed, a simple act of courage having shifted the balance. 142 bikers, men who had faced death countless times, were acknowledging a truth they couldn't ignore. Bravery doesn't come from size or strength, but from the heart. Isaiah could barely lift his head, the weight of pain pressing down. But he saw it, the respect, the awe, the realization in every eye. For the first time he felt seen, not as the bullied kid at school, not as the stuttering boy hiding in corners, but as someone who mattered, someone capable of change, someone capable of heroism. Vanessa's voice was soft, almost a whisper over the chaos. "You saved us all," she said. Her words were simple, but to Isaiah they were everything. Every bruise, every day of fear, every moment of feeling small had led here. And somehow, through it all, he had found the courage to protect the one person who had never let him fall. The diner returned to motion slowly. Coffee cups clinked, the sizzle of bacon resumed, but the memory of the kneeling bikers lingered. Isaiah Harper, bruised and trembling, had rewritten the rules of the room with a single act of love. Paramedics arrived quickly, the hum of sirens punctuating the hot Montana morning. Isaiah was lifted carefully, every motion deliberate. Vanessa rode beside him in the ambulance, hand clasped over his shoulder, murmuring encouragements that were more like prayers. The diner emptied slowly, whispers trailing behind as people processed what had happened. Patrons, bikers, even the intruders, everyone carried the weight of that single, extraordinary act. Outside, the motorcycles gleamed under the sun, a silent witness to courage that no words could fully capture. Isaiah felt a strange mix of pain and relief. His shoulder throbbed, every movement sending shockwaves through his body, but it didn't matter. What mattered was that Vanessa was safe. What mattered was that he had acted when it counted, had transformed fear into protection. Vanessa squeezed his hand, eyes glistening. "You're stronger than you know, little brother," she said, voice steady but unsteady. Isaiah wanted to argue, to deny it, but deep inside he felt a flicker of understanding. He had done something monumental, something that would be remembered, not for glory, not for recognition, but for the love that had driven him. In the chaos of the ambulance, the city streets, and the flashing lights, Isaiah Harper felt something he had never felt before: power. Not the kind that comes from muscles or threats, but the kind that comes from heart, courage, and love. And in that moment, the boy who had always hidden, the boy who had always been small, finally understood the meaning of being seen. The fluorescent lights of the hospital corridor felt harsher than the Montana sun. Beeping machines and hurried footsteps filled the sterile air, a sharp contrast to the chaotic warmth of the diner. Isaiah lay on a gurney, shoulder wrapped and immobilized, eyes half closed, every movement sending waves of pain racing through his body. Vanessa stayed by his side, holding his hand like it was the only anchor in a storm. Her face was tight, jaw clenched, eyes scanning every nurse, every doctor, as if daring anything to go wrong. For hours she stayed there, whispering words he barely heard, the cadence more about presence than content. Isaiah felt small again, fragile, yet somehow, in the midst of pain and fear, the same fire that had made him leap into danger was smoldering quietly, warming his chest. His mind wandered back to the diner, the kneeling bikers, the Scorpions frozen, the surreal beauty of 142 men showing respect for something they didn't expect. Something raw and human. For the first time, he realized that courage was not measured by who had more power, or who struck first, or who carried guns. It was measured by willingness to act, by the willingness to put love above fear. Vanessa brushed a strand of hair from his forehead, her fingers lingering just long enough to remind him he was alive. "You're going to be okay," she said softly, but Isaiah could see the hidden tremor in her hands, the tension in her shoulders. She had fought battles bigger than she would ever admit, and now she had one that was intimate, personal, worrying for the brother who had risked everything for her. Outside the room, the world kept moving. Ambulances, bikers, police chatter, all of it distant now. Inside, the sterile walls and the soft hum of machines made a quiet sanctuary for reflection. Isaiah understood something he had never allowed himself before. Bravery was lonely, but it could also be witnessed, acknowledged, and honored in ways that transcended words. He closed his eyes, letting Vanessa's presence ground him. He had taken a bullet, yes, but he had gained something far larger. A sense of self he had never known, the knowledge that he could face darkness and act. That fear didn't have to control him. And for a moment, he let the pain and relief coexist, two halves of a truth he would carry forever. News traveled fast. By the evening, the diner was buzzing again, but now with whispers instead of conversation. The 142 bikers returned, slower this time, cautious, reverent. They didn't enter to intimidate. They entered to check, to honor, to see the boy who had altered their world with a single act. Isaiah, still bandaged, sat in a chair in the hospital lobby. He tried to shrink, tried to disappear back into corners like he always had, but he couldn't. The biker's eyes found him instantly, steady and unjudging. Some nodded, others murmured softly, silent thanks, almost prayers for a boy they barely knew. Vanessa stood behind him, protective yet proud. She watched the interaction with a quiet intensity. These were her brothers, her extended family, men who had faced death without flinching, and yet here they were, humbled by a teenager's courage. She squeezed Isaiah's shoulder gently. "You did it," she whispered. "You saved me, and something more." Isaiah swallowed, unsure what more meant, but feeling it anyway. He realized the impact of that single act went beyond the diner, beyond the bikers, beyond himself. It rippled outward, touching every person who witnessed it, even those who weren't there. Courage had a weight, and it demanded acknowledgement. Even the hospital staff, hardened by years of trauma and emergencies, couldn't hide their admiration. Nurses whispered to one another about the boy who had acted without thinking, whose love had rewritten the rules of engagement. And Isaiah, for the first time, felt a strange pride, not the boastful kind, but quiet, steady, deep in his chest. In that moment, he understood something profound. He had been invisible for too long, but actions carried truth in ways words never could. Love could speak louder than threats, stronger than guns, and braver than fear. And for a boy who had spent most of his life feeling powerless, that knowledge was revolutionary. The following days were slow, each one a measured test of patience. Physical therapy, bandages, and doctor's orders were new territory, but Vanessa was there, guiding him, joking softly, pushing him gently to regain strength. Each step, each movement, was a reminder that survival was not just about enduring pain, it was about growing through it. Isaiah's stutter, once a constant shadow, seemed quieter now. He found his voice in small ways, thanking nurses, joking lightly with Vanessa, even sharing a short, stuttered conversation with a biker who had knelt at the diner. Every word, every sentence felt like a victory. Words could now exist outside fear. Outside, the Montana summer deepened. Motorcycles rumbled past the hospital, the distant sun reflecting off chrome like a promise. Vanessa rode with Isaiah once he was cleared for short trips, the wind in their hair, the roar of engines beneath them. And for the first time, he felt part of something larger, a family forged not by blood alone, but by loyalty, courage, and shared survival. The Scorpion's threat faded with time, handled by Vanessa and her brothers. The diner remained a quiet landmark, a symbol of what had happened, the place where ordinary people witnessed extraordinary courage. Isaiah learned something he had never believed possible. That fear could coexist with bravery, that vulnerability could coexist with strength. Each day, his shoulder healed a little more, but the memory of that bullet remained, not as trauma, but as a reminder of the moment he acted with love instead of fear. He had survived, yes, but he had also transformed. School resumed, but things were different now. Whispers followed Isaiah, but not with cruelty. The bullied kid was no longer invisible. People saw him not for his stutter or his small frame, but for his courage. Some were tentative, some awed, but all recognized a shift. Vanessa visited often, checking in with quiet humor, teasing him, reminding him that heroes often went unnoticed. Isaiah realized that courage didn't demand recognition, but acknowledgement was a gift he had never expected. He spent evenings reflecting, replaying the diner, the kneeling bikers, the sounds and smells, the bacon, coffee, gunpowder, chrome. It all became a collage of lessons. Love over fear, action over hesitation, selflessness over survival. He understood now that ordinary people could do extraordinary things when faced with impossible choices. At night, he sometimes woke with the memory of pain, but it was tempered by pride. He had acted, he had protected, he had survived. He was no longer just a boy who got beaten up at school. He was someone who had redefined what it meant to be brave. The kneeling bikers, Vanessa's steady hands, the diner, the shot, all etched into him as symbols of courage and love. And he knew deep inside that he would carry that knowledge for the rest of his life, sharing it silently through actions, presence, and small, meaningful gestures. Weeks passed, and life slowly found a rhythm again. Isaiah returned to school, cautious yet steadier, shoulders straighter than before. The stairs were still there, whispers still floated through hallways, but this time they carried curiosity instead of cruelty. Kids who once ignored him now offered hesitant smiles, and even a few classmates apologized in quiet, awkward ways. Vanessa continued her work at the garage, her leather vest now carrying an invisible patch of pride for her little brother. Every time she caught his eye, she gave a small nod, a silent acknowledgement of how far he had come. Isaiah, in turn, started small rituals for himself, writing short notes, drawing sketches, taking walks alone, learning to feel his courage without the adrenaline that had once fueled it. The diner remained a sanctuary in his memory. Mel, the owner, still kept a booth in the corner reserved out of respect. The chrome motorcycles still gleamed outside, reflecting sunlight like shards of hope. Whenever Isaiah walked past, he felt a quiet pulse of pride, not arrogance, just recognition of what had happened. Evenings with Vanessa became moments of storytelling, laughter, and quiet reflection. They spoke about dreams again, small ones, like learning to ride together, fixing up old bikes, and maybe taking a trip someday. The shadow of the past remained, yes, but the warmth of family, trust, and resilience had begun to outweigh the fear that once ruled his life. Isolated moments were still hard. Flashbacks came when least expected, but with Vanessa nearby and the lessons learned from that day, Isaiah faced them differently. Fear no longer paralyzed him, it informed him. It reminded him of the stakes, of love, and of the power of a single courageous act. Isaiah began to understand something profound. Courage wasn't always visible. It didn't come with medals or applause. Sometimes it came quietly, in choices no one witnessed, in split seconds that would define lifetimes. That bullet had hurt him, yes, but it had also opened his eyes to the strength within him. He thought of the kneeling bikers, the scorpions frozen in disbelief, and Vanessa's steady hands. Every moment of that day replayed like a slow, vivid film in his mind, the smell of coffee, the hum of the old air conditioner, the flash of chrome outside. Each sensory memory reminded him that extraordinary courage often arises from ordinary circumstances. Isaiah realized he didn't need to be loud to be powerful. He didn't need to be big to matter. Love could transform fear into action, and vulnerability could become a shield. He held on to that knowledge, letting it seep into his bones, guiding him quietly through school, friendships, and the subtle challenges of adolescence. Vanessa noticed the change too. He no longer flinched when she teased him. He held his head higher, smiled easier, and sometimes spoke without the stutter slowing him down. Small victories, yes, but monumental for him. And in these moments, Vanessa felt her own burden lighten. She had raised a boy into a man capable of facing his fears and protecting others. Word of Isaiah's act spread quietly but steadily. The diner became a local legend, and the story of a bullied teen who saved his sister was shared not for fame, but for inspiration. Local bikers occasionally visited, not as intimidation, but as reminders that courage could bridge worlds and ages. Isaiah started noticing subtle changes in his peers too. Kids who had once mocked him now asked for advice, sought friendship. He learned the delicate power of example, the ability of one act to ripple outward, changing perceptions and hearts. He had stepped into darkness and returned with more than survival. He returned with influence, empathy, and understanding. Vanessa continued to mentor younger bikers and teens, often using Isaiah's story to teach lessons about loyalty, courage, and love. Isaiah watched quietly, learning from her strength and guidance. The bond between them deepened, no longer just about protection, but shared experience and mutual respect. Through the months, Montana's summer stretched into autumn. The leaves changed colors, bikes rumbled along highways, and the diner remained a silent witness. Life moved forward, but the memory of that day lingered like a lighthouse, guiding, illuminating, inspiring. Years later, Isaiah still remembered the heat of that day, the weight of Vanessa's hand on his shoulder, the metallic smell of guns and coffee, and the stunned silence of 142 bikers kneeling. That single act had transformed him, his sister, and even strangers who witnessed it. Courage had become his inheritance, love his compass. He grew taller, stronger, more confident, but the lesson never faded. He learned that ordinary people could rise to extraordinary moments, that love often demanded risk, and that fear, when confronted, could forge heroes. Every small act of kindness, bravery, and protection carried echoes of that day, and he carried it forward quietly, intentionally. Vanessa remained his guiding force, her strength now shared, not one-sided.